Our next guest is known for his excellent work on the UFC commentary desk on ESPN. Oh, and let's not forget the great work he does on the Anik and Florian podcast. One of the nicest guys in MMA and also owner of one of the nicest mustaches, Jon Anik. Welcome back to Submission Radio. Dude, it's been too long. It's great to have you on the show.
Oh, I always enjoy chopping it up with you boys. And we just actually got done taping our podcast not all that long ago. But the mustache thing is tough, right? Because I'm just trying to blend in out there. And maybe people don't believe that because I'm wearing a mustache. But people seem to either love it or hate it. It's not just a tolerance. So I don't know, man. I had a married couple come at me pretty good this weekend asking as kindly as they possibly could if somehow I could shave it because it's affecting their pay-per-view experience.
Really? I thought they were going to ask you to join them in bed because it's a bit of an orgy mustache, but there you go.
Have you seen that Seinfeld episode, Jon?
Like, where's he going?
Have you seen that Seinfeld episode, Jon, where they talk about mustaches? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And
you're an orgy guy now, Jon. Embrace it.
And, right. I mean, at this point, when I look back in my phone, I have pictures from 2016, 2017 with a mustache. So at this point, one way or another, I've had this thing for 6 years. I'm not sure it's going anywhere.
I know. You're going to have to start dressing in velour and velvet now with the mustache. I love it. Don't listen to that couple who are clearly trying to get you in bed. Just keep the mustache for the pay-per-view broadcast. But man, gotta go back to UFC 260 this past weekend with obviously Francis Ngannou capturing the heavyweight title in spectacular fashion. And I was saying this to another media member that Francis and you watch so many fights, you watch so many knockouts, you become desensitized to it. Francis's are the only ones where I get a little bit squeamish. The Overeem one and even this Stipe one, you're just like, oh my God. I wonder, what was it like for you watching such a brutal knockout, sitting there, cage side, watching it live? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you set it up well. When Francis Ngannou fights, there's this cloud of catastrophe and this expectation that something disastrous could very well happen to his opponent, if not fatal. It's a scary thing. And when you talk about the greatest power threats and power punchers in UFC history, I used to say Anthony Rumble Johnson was the guy, but Derek Lewis made his UFC debut a couple years before Francis Ngannou. And in a lot of respects, Derek Lewis was that guy. If you look back at some of his early knockouts, that throwback, break your face open type of power, especially with some of those ground strikes, that's really scary stuff. So there's no doubt Francis Ngannou, when he's fighting, he feels like he's not human. It feels like it's such an undertaking for whomever the opponent is. How are they possibly going to do this? And that's why I said privately leading up to this fight, Francis Ngannou should be favored over anybody in a mixed martial arts setting. I'm not sitting here telling you that he's going to beat Jon Jones or he's better than Jon Jones skill for skill. But they lock him in a cage with another man. It seems sick and wrong. He seems like a different species.
Absolutely. It reminds me of back in the day with the Mike Tyson fights where it's like you didn't know if the guy was ever going to be the same after he walked into that ring, and everybody's a bit squirmish, like as he goes in there, like, does he really want to do this? Why would you want to do this? Why would anyone want to do this? This is a different level. And I love how DC said it kind of brings a different level to it as well, because it does, in the sense that, Francis is the champ, and you don't know if someone goes in there with a champ, they'll be walking out the same person. But I'm curious, man, because the big attention now is Francis versus Jon Jones. And immediately we saw the public negotiations from Dana White saying that Derek Lewis is the fight to make and joking that Jon Jones should consider fighting at middleweight. What was your reaction to the comments and the Jon Jones doesn't want to fight angle that's sort of being played out here?
Oh, Jon Jones doesn't have any fear in his bones, no pun intended. He certainly wants that fight, and if there is any doubt from anyone as to who's the greatest mixed martial arts athlete of all time, if George St. Pierre is your guy, if Khabib Nurmagomedov is your guy, if Jon Jones is not your guy and he goes and beats Francis Ngannou, he better become your guy, right? So the opportunity for Jon to further cement what is already GOAT status in my mind is a pretty special opportunity. He fears no man. I do think that there might be a little buildup here. Maybe they try to turn Francis Ngannou around quickly here in short order in 3 months against somebody like Derek Lewis. I know Ken Flo offered up on our show today that maybe Jon Jones would have a fight before Ngannou, maybe somebody like Cyril Gane or Alexander Volkov. I just don't see that at all because those are dangerous fights and fighters in their own right. So I do think Ngannou is the fight to make. I do think it might take some time to get the money right, but there is no fear in Jon Jones, I can tell you that. But it's a tough matchup for him. Don't be fooled.
Yeah, it's a crazy fight, and there's no fear in him, but there is frustration. I mean, we just saw on social media not long ago he just mentioned that the UFC should just cut him and let him go. It seems like this whole process is kind of not taking its toll on him, but it's not the most enjoyable process from the comments that he's been making. Do you think there's a point where sort of Dana White and the UFC pushes a little bit too far, and these negotiations can kind of damage things a little bit too much?
Well, it's hard for me to say, and as you guys know, as a UFC employee, it probably compounds it even more. I will tell you, I used to have conversations with Demetrius Johnson back in the day, and I used to say, hey, man, like, you got to be getting $1 million to show. You're LeBron James. Like, you're the best we have. You got to make $1 million to show. What am I missing, right? But it's a tricky thing, right? There are a lot of different things. There are a lot of internal metrics that I am not privy to. Certainly, if you're sitting here asking me about money, should Jon Jones, the consensus greatest mixed martial arts athlete of all time, make 25 million to show? Unequivocally, absolutely, yes, but it's certainly not my decision, and I know there are a lot of different things that go in it. But they do say the most basic human need is to feel appreciated, and sometimes a pat on the back or a good job, even for me after a show, feels better than $3,000, So I think that would go a long way for Johnny Bones as well. But if any fighter ever deserved a paycheck that is historic for a singular fight, it's Jon Jones for Francis Ngannou.
Absolutely. And I just want to say you do a fantastic job, Jon, on every broadcast. So I hope that makes you feel better as well. But I wonder, without sort of getting into massive details, I'm not expecting you to, take off the mask and reveal the secrets and pull back the curtain. But any idea why this fight seems so hard to sort of get over the line? Because it's not the first time that the fight couldn't get off the ground. And I feel like now is a better time for this fight with Jon Jones being bigger. Francis is the champion. But do you see this fight ultimately coming together?
Oh, I do. And let's also be clear. You guys, we're sitting down here Monday, March 29th. So I know there have been a lot of tweets from Jon Jones, some of which have been deleted. But the last we heard from Jon Jones was that he expects to get a goodwill type offer this week. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they were able to get aligned and rather expeditiously, if indeed that's the fight that the promotion wants to put together. If the Houston show wasn't so stacked, my wheels would be churning thinking they're going to try to headline Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou at Toyota Center, in the not too distant future. But if I'm Francis, I want to enjoy this belt at least for a little bit. I want to take this to Cameroon because you put the belt on the line in 2 or 3 months here, and Derek Lewis knocks you out. You're no longer the champion, and thereby goes the Jon Jones fight. So I do think they will be able to get the money right. But I would not criticize Jon Jones, and I hope fans would not for wanting, especially for a fight like this, to draw a hard line to try to get what he is worth. Because I don't know how you guys quantify Johnny Bones' worth, but other than Conor McGregor, he would have to be worth more per singular fight than anybody on the roster.
Yeah, there's just so much on the line. And if you're looking at ESPN as well, this is just a callback to the old school heavyweight big fights that they used to have back in the day where the world stops and everybody tunes in. So hopefully this can come together. And there's no boxing moves being pulled and somehow Francis loses and this fight never comes together, Jon. Oh my God, I don't even want to think about it. Let's just quickly just talk about the fight itself. If you're Jon Jones, how do you use your skill set to beat a guy like Francis, right? Because he is a man who brings in so much strength, so much power into that octagon. Who would you be leaning towards that fight if you kind of think about it right now?
Well, I think Francis Ngannou deserves the distinction to be favored over any man in a cage right now in combat sports. But I don't know that he deserves to be minus 180, as is sort of the current designation in a lot of places. But I do believe that Stipe largely understands what goal number one has to be when you're fighting Francis Ngannou. His motions are so big. Even when he sprawls, it's a huge energy sapper. When he shoots, as he did offensively in this fight, it takes a lot of energy. So even if Francis Ngannou's primary goal in a training camp was to improve cardiovascular strength, I don't think he's going to be able to sustain over 25 minutes. So you have to run clock. You have to extend the fight. That says nothing of all of Johnny Bones' skills and all the different things he could do. I think he has a lot of different takedowns and trips in his arsenal that maybe Stipe Miocic doesn't have. But cage size makes a difference. I thought the 25-footer was a big advantage for Francis Ngannou. A lot of my contemporaries disagreed. I think for Johnny Jones, strategically, you want to be in the 30-footer to allow your footwork to allow Francis to have to chase you a little bit more. So I think priority number one has to be in the best cardiovascular strength of your entire career, which is not going to be all that easy for Johnny Bones given the extended muscle mass now. But you have to try to force rounds 3, 4, and 5 with Francis. And I do think if Jon Jones can run clock for 10 minutes or so, he's got all the skills in the world. And I think he could head kick him too very effectively.
I think that with Jon Jones's IQ, it's going to make for a very interesting fight. But also those 10 or 15 minutes or however long he needs to run clock are going to be so tense, knowing what Francis Ngannou brings to the table. And I got to say, Stipe putting out a statement basically saying that he's okay, which is really, really good to see because it was a vicious knockout. And yeah, we'll see if he comes back. I'll be very curious where he fits into the division. You got to think it's going to be somewhere down the line. But I know we don't have a ton of time with you, John, so I just wanted to kind of skip ahead and ask, what have you thought about Jake Paul versus Ben Askren, which has quickly become the fight that a lot of people didn't realize how badly they wanted to see and in their lives. See, Dennis's dog going crazy about that fight. Loves a bit of Funky versus Jake Paul. What did you think of the festivities so far and Ben Pie facing Jake Paul?
Well, better Dennis's dog than my children who just made their way upstairs. I enjoyed the lead up and the preamble to this fight. I think what's interesting for me individually is that as a longtime boxing radio guy who used to be very defensive of boxing at a time against mixed martial arts, now it's like team MMA. How's Ben Askren going to beat this guy? I'm not exactly sure, but I think we're all on board the Askren train and really want to see him fare well and showcase himself well. I do think it's interesting, though, because I think that the counterpart, Paul, has more boxing ability than your average man out there does, right? Like, I think that he's the better boxer in this equation. So when Ben Askren says, like, if this dude can box, I'm probably going to lose, like, from a betting perspective, I think the dude can box. So as much as I love Ben Askren, I have not looked at a betting line. My action would probably be on the other side.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wonder how the referee's going to sort of control the clinching. You'd imagine Ben Askren being able to control the fight through the clinching and the boxing itself would be a big factor here. But are you expecting the fight to, I suppose, entertain people, or do you think people might be a little bit disappointed by what they see?
Well, I think you always run the risk of it looking like spectacle depending on how things play out. And as my broadcast partner Joe Rogan always says, crazy things happen in a combat sports setting. And he was saying it in reference to Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad, but you just never know exactly how things are going to play out. But I think you hit on the most salient point of the fight. And it's something that has really turned me off of boxing over the last 10 years or so. And it's why I probably only buy 3 or 4 pay-per-views a year, because depending on the referee that's in there, they let them hold and clinch all too often. And when you have fighters who strategically are trying to do that and run clock, to me, it becomes one of the more unwatchable sports in the world. So I am hopeful, not for Paul's sake, but for the sake of the fans, that Askren is not allowed to do that with regularity in the fight, because it will not be very entertaining if that is the case. I want to see Ben, use that farm boy strength and try to find a home for that left hand.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable as well. After surgery, him coming back so quickly and doing this fight. And I got this sort of theory here. If he does go on to win this fight, he's already had a bit of a back and forth with Jorge Masvidal on Twitter. Always the possibility that if things don't go Masvidal's way, he'd be looking for another big fight. A lot of people talking about how they'd be interested in seeing that rematch to see how it would go. Do you think there's a door slightly still open there for Ben Askren to come back and to possibly fight a guy like Jorge if he's in the right position, loses his fight to Usman, and he comes off this win over Jake Paul?
I love the question and I love the thought process. It's hard for me to see any upside for Jorge Masvidal in engaging in a rematch with Ben Askren. Why would you want to do anything that would affect in any way the greatest knockout or the fastest knockout in UFC history? So I just don't see any upside really for Jorge Masvidal, except for the financial, which obviously is a pretty important one. I think Ben Askren is back right now for dollars. And would this put him in a different stratosphere financially with the UFC if this goes well, or even if it doesn't? Perhaps. I think selectively there are going to be big fights for Ben Askren over the course of the next 3 or 4 years. Not unlike Khabib Nurmagomedov, I think there are going to be people who continue to come calling at these guys. But I think for Askren, because he has set himself up well financially, he's a smart guy. He's got his wrestling academies. He seems to have a lot of Bitcoin that I don't have. So I think Askren will be okay. It's just hard for me to see It's just hard for me to see the upside for George because when you got a 5-second knockout over a guy, how do you top that? Certainly not a 15-minute decision win. So it's a great question. I just don't see it.
Any chance there'd be any tattoo bets on the line for this one? Ben Askren versus Jake Paul.
I don't think so, my friend. I think maybe we were going to do some sort of Mexican flag next, potentially. I don't know if I could work a better Reno and Figueredo, but I don't know. We got to figure something out with the next tattoo bet.
All right, can't wait to see it. If you need any ideas, I'm sure the Smish Rated marketing department have a few. Speaking of tattoos, don't tattoo your balls with that rusty razor when trying to shave in the shower. Get the Manscaped's Lawnmower 3.0, the best grooming tool on the market with the 7,000 RPM of pure, delightful, skin-safe technology. Power. You've also got the LED light for, I don't know, if you're underground shaving your balls for whatever reason. And also it's waterproof, so you can do it in the shower seamlessly and prepare yourself for a hot date. Maybe your partner, maybe you're 1,000 years into marriage, you're looking to spice things up. Maybe you got a bit of back hair that you want to shave off. The Lawnmower 3.0 basically does it all, and they've got other great products that'll help you smell nice and just be clean downstairs in general. And you can use the promo code SUBMISSION and get 20% off the whole range, everything on the website. And of course, Manscaped supporting the UFC and MMA in general. So a great company to work with, and a lot of love for those guys. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, Cass. And we are presented by Manscaped. I love it. It's just the battery lasts forever. You just have it in the bathroom. You charge up, have it in the bathroom, ready to go for any kind of action that you're looking for. But speaking of companies that we love as well, I just want to mention the Ridge, Cass. And check out that wallet that Casper's got right there. That bad boy holds up to 12 cards, plus room for cash. 30 colors. Styles include carbon fiber and burnt titanium. And there's 40,000 5-star reviews. It's got durable material, which means the wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. Just buy one and carry it for the rest of your life. And of course, the Ridge team is so confident that you like it. They'll let you test drive it for 45 days. You can send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. So how could you argue with that quality? You guys could go to theridge.com/submission now and use code submission. Get 10% off with free worldwide shipping, and you can get returns as well. So that's theridge.com/submission. Use code submission. They've got a lot more than just wallets on there. Check out this bag that I just took to Tasmania here. This bad boy lasted very, very well through all the elements. It's almost like new. So go to theridge.com/submission now. But John, quickly as well, before you go, want to get your thoughts on the news that's coming clearer and clearer over this past weekend that, Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor. The rematch looks like it's targeted for July, with Dustin tweeting as much as the date. What do you think of this matchmaking, especially with Chandler Oliveira being for the lightweight title right now? Are you a fan of this rematch happening straight away?
Well, it seemed to a lot of us who were on Fight Island that there was contractual language that maybe was going to result in this rematch. So I don't think any of us is necessarily surprised. And I think Dustin Poirier would always bet on himself insofar as, if I can win this fight, I can still fight for the undisputed title, because I don't think we should lose sight of the fact that Dustin is not going to be content if he doesn't at least fight for that undisputed title once more. He may not win it, but he at least needs to fight for it, I think, to have peace of mind. And if he loses the trilogy fight to Conor McGregor, all indications are that Conor McGregor's next fight is going to be for the undisputed lightweight title. So in some way, shape, or form, Dustin Poirier is putting a title shot on the line, despite the great payday against Conor McGregor. But I'm excited to see divisionally how things play out with Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira. I am hopeful that Dustin and Conor will complete their trilogy at 155 pounds, but perhaps they would do that up at welterweight, which would make that fight less relevant divisionally at 155, but I can understand why neither guy maybe would want to cut the weight. But I really think this is Dustin betting on himself, that he feels like he figured some things out in that McGregor rematch. Not that he wants to get hit by that left hand in the trilogy completer, but I think Dustin is confident enough in the matchup that he can win it. And then at that point, if it's Chandler or Oliveira, I wouldn't be surprised to see Dustin try to turn around quickly and take that fight.
For sure. And I think what's fascinating is that going into that rematch, a lot of people kind of expected Conor to walk through Dustin just based on how the first fight played out. And of course, it didn't happen at all. And we saw the calf kicks. And now it almost seems hard to envision Conor adapting to those calf kicks in just such a short amount of time. I'm wondering how you think he's able to do that. And also, you mentioned the stakes that if either man wins, it's a next shot at the lightweight belt. But if, the stakes always feel massive with Conor. If Conor loses, what do you think is on the line for his career as well?
Well, it's a game of inches. I mean, Conor McGregor hit Dustin with one or two left hands, but there was one of them that was significant enough that a millimeter either way, that could have been the beginning of the end for Dustin Poirier. And then Conor McGregor is on the podium after the fight, and he's like, yeah, I can barely walk, but we were still able to get it done. And then maybe the narrative flips a little bit or changes going into that next fight. But the short answer on the calf kicks, my man, is can't take one. I mean, you really can't take one. And I think Conor McGregor defensively got a little bit lazy towards the end of round one and certainly early round two. And then all of a sudden there's one that completely compromises the limb and you're not the same fighter. But as far as Conor McGregor's future, I love that he's back for legacy. You guys and I have talked about this in the past. I always thought after the Floyd Mayweather fight that eventually he would be back for mixed martial arts legacy. And the risk you take when you come back for legacy is that it doesn't go so well. And now all of a sudden he looks up at the ledger. He's 1-2 at 155 pounds in the UFC. So the division in which everybody thought he would do his best work over however long his UFC career was, he's now below 500 in that division. So he's got some work to do, I think, for his own peace of mind. And that should be encouraging for fight fans because I think he's going to be around for several years and several big fights, no matter what happens in the trilogy with Dustin.
All right, John, last question before we let you go. And this is the exciting fight between Marvin Vettori and Darren Till. That's next weekend. How are you leaning towards this one? The battle for the best middleweights in Europe is just almost upon us.
I can't wait to see it. I could give you a little bit more of a lean if I wasn't calling the fight. I will say that Marvin Vettori is really the X factor in this division for me because I think the recipe that he brings to the table and the will and the cardiovascular strength is such that he's not necessarily the guy you want to be staring across the octagon at. All of that being said, I do believe that Darren Till is the better, more explosive athlete. And I think there's so much pressure on Darren Till because Adesanya has sort of called him out as the guy he wants to fight, the one guy in the division that will provide a new stylistic challenge that he hasn't had yet. So there's a lot of pressure on Darren Till. But I love that Till's at 85 now with finality because that's the weight class in which he belongs. What a great fight and what a great showcase for these two guys on ABC. But I don't know, man. I always say Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is where all welterweight winning streaks go to die. And better be careful with this Marvin Vettori, man, because he just has a lot of different ways to win. And I think his X factor is his heart, which is probably as big as anybody's in the sport.
I know, and he's got a big chip on his shoulder as well, so very exciting. Also, we get to see the new Venom uniforms, I believe, so that's going to be exciting. And then, of course, your work on the commentary desk. Follow the man on Twitter and Instagram at Jon_Anik. I feel like you're one of the most underappreciated guys in MMA because your work is not only so good, but so consistent. I almost feel like when it's done right, people don't even notice because, you're just doing such a fantastic job, man. So hats off to you, John. Keep up the excellent work, and please, even more importantly, keep up that mustache.
Mustache is here to stay, and thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. And I will say sort of in closing, when I'm not coming off of a back-to-back, when I am doing a pay-per-view like I was this weekend and I don't have a show the week before, I have so much more time to prepare. And, hopefully that's reflected in the broadcast. I feel like I need to talk to my boss and say, hey, man, when we have a pay-per-view, don't schedule me the week before. But I appreciate it, and it's a labor of love like it is for you guys. So, but it means a lot, and we are on to the next, my friends.
100%,
Make sure to
man.
check out the Anik Fluorine pod as well. One of the best pods out there, and consistently one of the best pods out there, just like John's work as well. John, thank you so much, man. Can't wait to see what's
Hey,
next.
hope
Thanks
to
for
see
joining
you
us.
guys. I hope to see you guys at a live event soon. It seems like the light is at the end of the tunnel. So
I know. Hopefully we'll be doing one of these in person soon when the borders reopen. Till then, man, pleasure as always, John. Lots of love.
my pleasure. Take care, boys.